I think the Chicago Bears will be a good football team this year. But to move forward, they have to exercise some demons of the past. That more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso. With the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. And it's nice to have somebody here with me in the cockpit once again. But with that being said, on today's show, what is the biggest question for these teams moving forward? We'll look at the Arizona Cardinals, if they're ready to step up, Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks, what they could do, but we'll start with the Chicago Bears and Ben Johnson's first real task. Before we get into it, though, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Luke, I'm looking at the Chicago Bears. And I know that, opinions differ out there. But I think that they have...
I'm already in trouble.
I think they have a lot of talent. And I think if Ben Johnson is the coach that a lot of people believe that he can be, they should be much improved. But, as I said, to move forward, this Bears team needs to get rid of some of the bad vibes that they've had in the past. And a lot of that can be attributed to bad body language, which is a big discussion around DJ Moore, and something that Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears mentioned recently.
The question about the body language kind of is more a bigger deal if you're not getting the results, right? Does body language become a problem if you're losing or if you're not getting the targets? And that's sort of a double-edged sword there, where it's like, if the Bears are winning, body language isn't really a problem for anybody, and if they're losing, body language is a problem for a lot of people. So as long as Ben Johnson continues to be successful and that if this team takes those steps forward we expect them to, then I really don't expect body language to be much of a problem, and that everything will be fine with DJ Moore.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Listen,
hey, winning cures everything. Winning cures everything.
Winning does cure everything, and I agree with that as a general statement. But, Luke, I guess sometimes the phrase winning cures everything, it's like that's a destination thing to say when to even
simply win a bunch of games. Problem goes away. Easy. Yeah.
Right. But to do that, it's like you can't, how do I put this? You have to correct that behavior that creates the bad body language before you start winning. That's a culture. That's a mindset. That's a togetherness. That's a respect for your teammates thing. So they got to get rid of that now, not just hope that, hey, we'll win games and it'll go away. Like, the work that they put in right now to develop the culture under Ben Johnson has to eliminate that before the games can be won, not after.
I have a scalding take about this. Which is, I actually, for reasons nobody talks about with Ben Johnson, I think he might be kind of perfect for this. I think the kind of player that is really, kind of susceptible to showing their frustration is, I guess, the politically correct way to put this. The kind of player that's going to whine when they're down. That's DJ Moore, the kind of guy that's going to pout.
Williams.
Ben Johnson is a notorious hothead. We talk about him as the scheme whiz. He's a temper kind of guy. I kind of think that's perfect for those players. I think sometimes those players need to get lit up a little bit, and it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of, I'm trying to get you better. It's hard coaching. Sometimes those players need that, but everybody's different. And I don't know DJ Moore personally, and I don't know Ben Johnson personally, but they know each other personally. So hopefully they know what to do. But that you mentioned Caleb Williams. I mean, my biggest question for Chicago is my biggest question for New England and my biggest question for Denver. And everybody with a second-year quarterback is, can they build on what they did last year? With the exception of maybe Jaden Daniels, and I guess J.J. McCarthy for different reasons. But for those guys, and Penix, like those four guys that had these kind of, these rookie years where they showed enough for you to feel okay, but you want to see that and an expansion of what they can do. Well, are we going to get that? Is Ben Johnson going to unlock that? And in a greater version of that question, what kind of offense is the one that Ben Johnson builds for Caleb Williams. It's not going to be the same thing that it was in Detroit, although I do think that their commitment to the offensive line is no coincidence, that they do want to maybe be a little bit more serious about the run. But it's, if Ben Johnson, if we see him as the scheme wizard that has all the right answers to the questions, then what is his right answer to the question of what's the best scheme for Caleb Williams? It certainly wasn't the stuff Shane Waldron was doing. So what is it? What's it going to look like? I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, because you're right. It's good. There's a totally different skill set than what Jared Goff is working with, so it's got to be built totally different.
I have no idea what the answer should be. I'm curious to see what he comes up with.
I would say you're right in that the biggest question is probably Caleb Williams, but I guess my biggest question is just even before that. It's just, can Ben Johnson, like you said, he's a guy that has all the answers to the test. He's the scheme wizard. He's, oftentimes, and I talked about it recently when talking about, the Tennessee Titans, when talking about the Miami Dolphins as well, looking at them as an option. Like these scheme lord coaches, the biggest question is, what can you do with the culture side of it? What can you do with the leadership side of that? That's where a guy like Sean McVay, a guy like Kevin O'Connell has really, and I even think a guy like Kevin Stefanski, honestly, has found a way to kind of.
Yeah, he's been running an insane asylum a little bit over there, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Think about how crazy it's been, and the ownership, and Deshaun Watson. Can Ben Johnson, we know that he's good with the scheme, and he could go get the #1 offensive coordinator job anytime that he wanted it for the rest of whatever. But can he fix the culture? Can he correct the bad body language? Can he remove and exorcise the bad vibe demons from the Chicago Bears organization? Yes, we need Caleb Williams to be good, but I guess my big question for the Bears is more existential. It's like spiritual. Can the Chicago Bears
be different?
Yes. Can you get past the bad vibes and just bear down? All right, bear down and make something happen. So Caleb Williams is probably the more tangible big question, but I also think that the Bears just need to kind of get past this culture of disappointment that they're in. And now with the expectations of Ben Johnson, what does a good year for Caleb Williams look like? I think the expectations are certainly way higher because of Ben Johnson, even if the floor is higher because of Ben Johnson as well.
I think the expectation might be set. If you want to talk about, getting a monkey off your back, this has to be the year where they get the first 4,000 yard passer in franchise history.
Right.
I know it's an arbitrary. I hate 4,000 yard season discourse. I think it's the stupidest way to do stuff. I think it just carries like a juju in Chicago, or that would be a nice one to no longer have to accept jokes about. But it's also not the threshold it used to be. 4,000 yards. It's a little bit more. If Caleb Williams is average, that feels like that then that could happen. And that would just be like one ruby out of the cursed totem's eyes, Yeah,
I feel like the Bears are like an Indiana Jones movie. Like Ben Johnson has the hat on, and he's trying to dive around
like a monkey's paw finger uncurls.
Oh man, I love that right there. But either way, I think it does happen for the Bears. I think Ben Johnson is able to, because I agree with you. There's like a Coach Carter vibe here where Ben Johnson is going to tell all these guys who are crying and when shut up. We're going to win games. Just shut up and let's go. And I think that is 100% what the Bears need. So I do think they answer the bell. I think the Bears make the playoffs this year. That's been my opinion all along.
Yeah, I've covered a lot of meaningless week 17 and 18 games against the Bears.
Yeah.
And I think the first time I really noticed it was 2016, which was the first year I actually wrote about football in a serious capacity. And you could tell that there was a sort of I want to go home to it in a way that I never noticed with other week 17 meaningless games that you would ever see. And I don't know. I think that kind of thing does permeate, especially when you never really get a clean reset for the franchise. You're either running back the same QB or the same coach or the same GM or some combination is flipping over, but you're never really there's always some level of the toxicity that's still there. But I think circle back to Lauren's ultimate point, start 3-0. You will never worry about this again. People will believe that it'll feel, even if you go, you fall to 3-3 after that, you will get, I think that helps people to kind of see at least the vision and go, okay, we can do this. We did win 3 in a row and this thing went wrong and that thing went, but we did go 3-0. But if you get to a slow start of the season, some of the players who have been there for a little bit, it's so hard not to go, here we go again.
When it's new, you need a little proof of concept to believe.
Yeah.
I think that's only human nature. But with that being said, proof of concept, did we get it with Sam Darnold last year? Or are we just being haters? We're going to talk about that. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. I love that it's completely online. Rugiet connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. Biggest question for every team in the NFL before training camp. We're continuing the series today. We talked about the Chicago Bears, the bad vibes, Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, but now we got to talk about another team who's looking to maybe have some better vibes this year, take another step forward, and it's the Seattle Seahawks. And of course, they brought in Sam Darnold this year, and my guy Corbin Smith from Locked On Seahawks talked about the move.
For the first time since the Russell Wilson trade and Geno Smith taking over as the new starter, the Seahawks will have a different quarterback under center in 2025, coming in the form of Sam Darnold signing a 3-year, $100.5 million contract to open free agency. And as we talked about yesterday, Rob, there's certainly some pressure when you sign for that kind of money, even if it's not top 10 quarterback money. $100.5 million is still a lot of money, and you were expecting Sam Darnold after a breakout year in Minnesota last season to take the next step, not regress, not flatline. As fans, you're hoping that that was just the beginning for a former top 10 pick that's always had the physical tools to get it done.
Listen, I even think that Sam Darnold flatlining in the football sense, of course. I think Sam Darnold flatlining from what he did last year would still be great for the Seahawks. I think that's what you're hoping for, is that he can replicate some of it. If you think that Sam Darnold is going to improve and be better than what he was last year, I think your expectations are too high. I think a slight regression, or again, I think it would be a tremendous outcome if you got the same Sam Darnold from last year. I think most people, if you did Family Feud style, asked 100 people on the street, do you think Sam Darnold is going to play better, the same, or worse next year? Most people, I think, would say worse. So if you're the Seahawks, I think expecting better Sam Darnold is insane. Expecting the same Sam Darnold is still a little crazy, but at least a little more realistic. I think easily the biggest question is, what are they going to get out of Sam Darnold, and is he going to turn into a pumpkin again?
I mean, yeah, the whole Seahawks season rides on the quarterback, as you could probably say about like 20 teams in the NFL. Here's my question with Sam Darnold is, what it's sort of similar to the Bears. What's Kubiak's plan? What is Clint Kubiak's plan here with this guy? Because what I know about Clint Kubiak, from what he did with the Saints last year, what he did when he was in Minnesota, which he is there. It's been a long time since 2021 for Clint Kubiak. He's learned a lot. He's incorporated a lot. He's a way different guy. But my understanding of Clint Kubiak is still that he would prefer, if he had his druthers, to be that there's this play calling thing of like, are you a nice restaurant with 6 things on the menu, or are you the Cheesecake Factory with 100 things on the menu? Yeah. Right. A nice restaurant, you can only get 6 things. You don't get a lot of choice, but those 6 things are going to be real good. And Clint Kubiak likes to be a nice restaurant. That's still my understanding of him. I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to utilize Sam Darnold, because what you got to do when you are that, you got to be really, really good and consistent at executing. And Sam Darnold is explosive, but not consistent. That is the way his game has always been. The Vikings found a way to make that work last year really, really, really well, to get more explosive and less inconsistent, a way to keep him from, throwing the ball away too much. They kept the turnovers to a reasonable minimum. And Klint Kubiak has to do that. But to do that, here's the thing that the situation that will arise. You're not going to go through 17 games of Sam Darnold without him laying an egg in one of these. There's just going to be a day where like, oh my God, that's the third interception. What's happening? Are you pulling him? Is it Jalen Milroe time? Are you going to totally shatter your relationship with him? Are you going to turn this into a QB competition thing? Or are you going to take him back to the sideline, tell him, shake it off, move on to the next thing. We have a bad game sometimes, and then you get 4 touchdowns from him the next day. Or are you going to put in Jalen Milroe, who's going to throw 2 interceptions, and now you're just backing off and you ruined all your momentum, right? Like, how much faith do the Seahawks really have in Sam Darnold? That contract, I think, depending on how you read it, could give you a couple different answers. How much faith do you have in Sam Darnold, and do you have enough to ride out the lows so that you can kind of earn your way into the highs? That was the way that I went on Locked On Seahawks and talked about it with Corbin. That Sam Darnold, you need to just sort of close your eyes and trust him, even when it feels insane to do so. Will Klint Kubiak do that, or is he going to contract the offense? Is he going to start going into, well, let's just be all quick game. If we can't block, we're going to get the ball out in 2 seconds. And that's just not the way Sam Darnold plays. It feels like you're just teetering, like the 1 or 2 of the wrong things happen. And I'm not even talking about injuries. I'm talking about the wrong, like they lose a game in a way that feels bad in the wrong way. And suddenly you could absolutely find yourself in a situation where you are doing things on offense that make sense on paper, but do not make sense for Sam Darnold. And this thing totally crashes and burns.
Yeah, it's a person's natural tendency to float back to what they feel comfortable with. And if what you feel comfortable with, it's something that I talked about on yesterday's episode of Locked On NFL with Brian Callahan and Cam Ward. You know, if like what you feel comfortable with is always going to be your security blanket, you're going to go back to it when things go bad. But if what you're comfortable with in your security blanket isn't what's best for your quarterback, what kind of conflict does that create? And can you kind of hold the fort, you know what I mean, and keep going? I think you're right about that. And let me say on the other side of it, it would be an absolute detriment to not only Sam Darnold to give up on him quick and not have patience, but it would be a major detriment to Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe has been impressing early on, but Milroe does not need to play at all whatsoever this season. Like, he should not go in. I think it would be detrimental to his development. Like, they have a perfect excuse to just ride out Sam Darnold no matter what happens. The money that they paid him, it's 1 year, $33 million in reality, though, if we want to get down to brass tacks about what the commitment truly is. I mean, it's basically
that first year, there's outs. Like, how truly, he's tradable. Like, you can. Do you think it's Drew Lock moments if Darnold twists his ankle? Do you think Drew Lock comes in and you say, Milroe, you're in the rice cooker?
Yes, you absolutely. That's what they should do. Will they? I don't really know. But what they should do is do not put Jalen Milroe out there no matter what. And honestly, you talk about an explosive offense. Where's the explosion? All right? Like, Cooper Kupp is a good player still. He's never been explosive. You know what I mean? Jackson Smith-Njigba is not an explosive player. He's a good athlete. I'm not saying he's not, but both of those guys are kind of settled down in the middle of the zone, read the defense.
Yeah, it's 20-yard chunks.
None of them are like
going for that.
Boom, explosiveness. So I guess I do wonder about that as well.
Yeah, I kind of do think that the answer is Jackson Smith-Njigba, which is another one. I mean, you could say we're going to throw bombs to Marquez Valdez-Scantling and party like it's 2019 again. But I do think that it's JSN on like posts and stuff. There is a little bit of proof of concept. I know he didn't run the best 40, but like he did get a couple of those last year. And he did sort of prove that he could be that guy. And it was just that wasn't really the kind of offense that they wanted to have, but now it has to be. But what you cannot do if you're Seattle, and my biggest question is, are they going to fall for it? What you cannot become is, oh, let's just like contract things and be really safe with the ball because there's been a couple turnovers or there were a couple sacks. So let's try to really, quicken things up and live in slants and in bubble screens and stuff. You will so quickly become the worst iterations of offenses you have seen in the past, Seattle. Like, you will very quickly become like, name your forgotten quarterback that couldn't do anything. The night you'll become Nightmare Bo Nix. Like it's so fast. If you abandon what Sam Darnold is good at, you're just going to have an unexciting offense and a quarterback that's not good for it. And let's enjoy scoring 6 a game.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough situation if they do that. But obviously, whether you want to look at it from the Clint Kubiak direction or just look at it in general from what the team can be, Sam Darnold is the biggest question for the Seattle Seahawks. But now we got to look at a team that's in the same division that's looking to kind of take that step up and maybe steal Seattle's spot in the Arizona Cardinals. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it is easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on online shopping, and now I budget smarter and save more. And instead of doing that by juggling multiple apps, I can use Monarch to check my finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We've talked about the Bears, talked about the Seahawks. Now, I'm going to stay in the NFC West and talk about the Arizona Cardinals because they're a team that we talked about throughout the season last year. Hey, they're fun. They're a frisky team. They're competitive. They're battling. They're probably an off-season away from taking the next step. Well, now that off-season has happened. And now that I think the Arizona Cardinals do have a solid roster, I think the spotlight goes on Kyler Murray. And I think the biggest question for the Cardinals this year is Kyler Murray a top quarterback? Like, is Kyler Murray an advantage at quarterback, or is he just a middling tier 3, more pop than substance type quarterback that, kind of he's looked like so far? Well, my guy Alex Clancy from Locked On Cardinals is focusing on that as well.
When I say it's time to shine, when I say there's no excuses for Kyler Murray, it's not a threat. I don't think, and I haven't thought, that they need to move off from him until we find out what happens this year. I am of the camp that he was drafted into a no-win situation. They had some wins. A lot of them were because of him. Not because of the play calling, not because of the coaching, not because of the leadership, not because of the roster. He had to carry this team to victory. And now, the zero excuses are as such that he's got everything. I mean, they got one of the more deep rosters in football now. Still unproven naturally. A lot of rookie, second-year guys, even third-year guys. Like, still very young and unproven. But this is by far the best roster he's had. I know that there were more top-heavy rosters, in earlier years, but, Larry Fitzgerald was 100. They didn't really have, with DeAndre Hopkins, it was fine, but, I still think Cliff Kingsbury wildly underutilized him, even though he had over 100 receptions one year. Like, this is different. And you don't just say this is different every year as an excuse. This is different. This is different. He was set up to fail initially. He won in spite of Cliff Kingsbury, not because of him. And now, after a full year removed from being in this offense, there's no safety net anymore.
I'm with him. We need to see it from Kyler Murray. It's time. He was a number 1 overall pick. It's been forever since he's been relevant. Nobody cares about Kyler Murray anymore. Nobody talks about him. He's supposed to be this dynamic dual threat player with a good arm, and the size hasn't even been that big of an issue. He just doesn't have the juice anymore, man. It just seems like his swagger is just totally gone. I don't know if that's just from being in Arizona and things not working out, but he has not lived up to the player that you thought that he could be. And if Alex is right and the roster is as good as it's ever been in Arizona, which you look at the O-line, you see pieces. Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like he's taking a step forward. They have really good schematics on defense, I mean, Jonathan Gannon had those boys ready to roll, and they didn't even have that much talent. You add in Walter Nolan, you add back Calais Campbell, like Will Johnson at corner, they added Josh Sweat. This team is good enough to make the playoffs. They need to compete, and Kyler Murray needs to be a difference maker.
I don't know if Kyler Murray is a question mark. I don't know if I agree here. I think we know exactly what Kyler Murray is. I think he's a pretty good QB. He's threatening in most games. He's good
we
for.
We know it's not good enough to me.
He's
if
good
we know
for
the answer. It's not good enough.
I didn't. You said it, not me. But I mean, he's good for 2 or 3 games a year where some bozo backbreaking thing happens that is like pretty much his fault. I had a front row seat to one of those this last year against Minnesota, where they had the chance and then he throws this backbreaking interception on the run. That happens to him regularly enough where I don't think you can reasonably go into a season and expect that not to happen. The question mark to me in Arizona is what is the duo of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray going to look like? Yeah. Marvin Harrison Jr. last year kind of came in as the anointed one, like as the guy, but he was not better than Brian Thomas. He was not better than Malik Neighbors. He wasn't
better than Brock Bowers either.
Yeah, no, by yards per route run, which I think is the gold standard for efficiency stats in for wide receivers. He ranked tied for 50th with Quentin Johnston and Noah Brown.
Not good.
You got to do better than that if you're the guy that you're supposed to be. So I don't know what this is going to be. Arizona feels like they're in this almost Chargers-y place to me, where it's like every week you're going to be a difficult game to pick. You're always going to be in it. We're never going to look at you and write you off. You'll be in the hunt graphic all the time. But something new needs to happen here before I am starting to look at you and talk about you in the same sentence as Detroit and Philadelphia and Los Angeles and San Francisco and Minnesota and Green Bay, if you want to, as these like true, like these teams that could actually go do something interesting in January. Otherwise, they kind of feel like an interesting Thursday night team that will be fun to watch. And that starts with it's not about Kyler Murray's ceiling. It's about his floor. It's about how easy is it to win a game when Kyler Murray's having a bad day? And Marvin Harrison Jr. is a major part of that equation and hasn't been #that guy yet. He's been pretty good. And, young, do we get another step forward? Like, that's the big question. If he steps forward, he becomes a 1,500-yard receiver, 885 last year. If he steps forward and becomes, a receiver comfortably with a comma in his yardage total, we might be having a different conversation. Or does Arizona do what I've always wanted them to do and just decide to be a ground and pound, physical, beat the absolute heck out of you team with a strong defense and win a bunch of games 17-16 and go be old school? I would love that. Kind of hard when you're a dumb team, but I would still love that for them. If they're going to be, if Kyler to Marvin Harrison is going to be their Burrow to Chase and take them to the Super Bowl, I got to see a lot more out of both of those guys. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, if you're Marvin Harrison Jr. and you were taking number 4 overall, you're expected to be better than Malik Neighbors, and especially Brian Thomas Jr., who was taken a lot later. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. is bulked up. Like, he's real big and physical now. He looks much bigger, and I like that because the way that he's going to have... Trope alert. Yeah, I know, but you can actually see it. Second-year player has gained bulk. From year 1 to year 2, I think it's actually believable, though, because obviously you're in an NFL offseason program for a long time. But I think the way that Marvin Harrison Jr. becomes the best version of Marvin Harrison Jr. that does have the comma in his win total and 1,500. And I think the way that he does that is by being a physical specimen and being bigger, stronger than everybody else, because he's not going to outspeed people. So I think he's going to have to win more that way than maybe he had to in college when he was more open. But I just want to say, based on what you're saying with the Cardinals and who they are as a team, I think you're dead on. Them taking that next step forward and getting out of the proverbial friend zone, we'll call it, of the NFL. They're in the friend zone of the NFL. They're not a serious dating option, but you like having them around. They're always fun to see. They'll like texting with them, getting that attention. Part of the friend group, but are you ever going to be one-on-one? Yeah, no, I like the Cardinals prospects to be a pretty good team this season. But what are we in year 7 of 6 of Kyler Murray? 7, I think, yeah. Don't we want something more than this by now? They've been a fringe wild card in the hunt team for a while with Kyler Murray. And Alex is right. a lot of the reasons for that have nothing to do with Kyler Murray. It wasn't his fault. There was this Cliff thing the Steve Keim problems. There's been toxicity in that organization holding him back.
Yes, but not anymore.
But not anymore.
Not anymore.
And I'm sorry, that toxicity is not an excuse for throwing up a duck on the run in the fourth quarter of a game-winning drive and getting it picked off by a former Cardinal, Byron Murphy Jr., to seal the win. I'm sorry, that's on you, man.
Well, then I guess I'll put it this way. You may say we already know who Kyler Murray is, and maybe you're right. But can Kyler Murray, who he is, be a good enough quarterback to take this roster and this team to the playoffs? That is a question that we will get answered, and I don't know if we know that, so there will be some sort of finality, in my opinion, based on what we see from Kyler Murray this season. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Brain, Luke Braun, as we tell you every episode. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.